I had a really great response to my last video that I wanted to share here. And the last video was about, is life easier if you don't think too much? You know, you have a lot of people who you really feel you don't get along with, have a hard time having a conversation with, where it's like, oh, you think too much, don't overthink things, go with the flow, and you just can't sleepwalk with the rest of them. And it ponders the question, do overthinkers like myself and many of you guys, do you suffer more? It's easier to go along. It's easier to belong to a sect or a group where you've got all the rules laid down in one book. You just follow them, you sing the hymns, and you walk like a duck, you quack like a duck. And I'm not putting it down. It's a lot easier to live that life. A lot of times when I drive home, I see bald men with big beer guts mowing the lawn. They've got a dog, a wife, family, and so forth. And I think that's a very stable life. I can see the objective comfort in that structure. I kind of get it. I get the easing of anxiety of knowing, okay, this is a structure of my life. This is normal. This is what everyone's done up until now. And our survival instincts say, keep doing this. You've been alive to this point. Keep doing it. I had a really awesome response from Flaccid Enduro to my last video. Is life easier if you don't think too much? And he said, I suppose they say for every answer you get at least 3 times as many questions. There's a lot of cons that are rising out of the secularism, progressivism that has been taking a firm hold recently. Most of them including my best friends who have been discussing the concept of convictions and standing by them. Yeah, this is interesting. Everyone's in survival mode now as the environment around us is appearing more and more unstable. All of a sudden, everyone is being philosophical because your book won't save you. You need to think. You can't rely on others when you have to rely on yourself and your own mind. And you haven't been used to doing it. I can imagine how it could be more nerve-wracking. Maybe a bit easier for those of us more philosophically inclined, but yeah, I can appreciate it. And as that survival mode kicks in place, the need for stability and reliability of patterns in life, concepts that we can trust now, and being responsible for the chess games of our lives, more than the one move at a time that the last few generations have been used to. Indulging in the moment, man. A big candy store where we don't have to think about tomorrow. Well, now you do. Now the store has been closed. Literally, the store is closed. And you're at home, locked away. There's no more party. The world isn't an ultra-safe place in party mode where you can do anything you want and always have your mistakes ameliorated by the state and everyone else who believes that we should be just having fun without any consequences to our actions. So now, like many of us overthinkers, the rest of the world has to start to consider more than the chess move they're making. They need to consider a few moves ahead. The responsibility of thinking and perhaps thinking a bit more than they used to before. He continues, I think the biggest problem we have as dudes who think too much is that we are rendered vulnerable by a sense of doubt. This is true, and it's not to say that we're insecure, but being philosophically open is you're open to discussions and different points of views, and no matter what you think you know, you're always open to it being sharpened, being better, knowing more, and thus reducing your anxiety and feeling more secure in your life. A sense of knowing always feels good. He continues, we have little to zero convictions on philosophy and politics, and that can cause us to be unsure of ourselves and our actions. Yeah. We're always open to discussing the same topics philosophically because we know that they can change in our lives in relation to how old we are, our points of view, what we need, what's right now as opposed to what was right back then. There are a lot of factors that don't hold philosophy in place. It's always a malleable thing that adjusts itself to the environment, who you are, and what works for you. Whereas sometimes I think people who have grown up with, or they had a life raft thrown to them when they were in pain or loss by a sect or a group, and that saved them, they stay there because they want to stay safe. They may have outgrown it, but there's a part of a survival instinct in them that refuses to let it go because it doesn't want to be vulnerable like it did in the past. For instance, you get a lot of guys that find a pocket in the manosphere that saved them. Great, and I'm not discounting that. But it saved them and it gave them information. And a lot of times we're meant to go back on our own way. It's like you see people who go to therapy. It's supposed to be a place of temporary fixing and then you go off on your own. But a lot of people make friends with their therapists and the therapy industry loves that. So you don't get better. You stay broken. You stay frozen in that point of being broken, whether it's in therapy or in certain groups on the internet. You don't grow and heal and move forward and expand and learn and sharpen, become less fearful, become more courageous. Anyway, I'm sidetracking. So this is a peculiar thing as being a thinker and more philosophically minded and enjoying these kind of conversations, especially when they're ethical, when they relate to everyday life. They're really interesting because you can see the practical application of them out there in front of you on the street, how you talk and speak and how you act. They're not academic. This sense of more philosophically people being rendered more vulnerable by a sense of doubt. It's because we've got this doubting curiosity. There's always this kind of payoff with new things being revealed and our points of view being sharpened. And as us, that sharpening makes us feel alive. Our colours get more vivid the more we adjust and know things better. People who are stuck in dogmas and groups, while safe, they just trust one way, regardless of what changes in their environment or in their lives, or if their body, their natural life has moved on, but their mind refuses to. It's like a train's approaching and you refuse to move out of the way because your doctrine says you have to stand still. And I understand the survival reflex is like, no matter what, you abide by the doctrine of our group that saved you, because the fact is your biology says we're all here. There's enough of us here in this doctrine to say that we survive. So without question, don't move away from that oncoming train. It's a hard thing to reconcile, I admit. The quite rational, biological, historical imperative from people who belong in groups and feel safety and will give everything for the group rather than trust their instinct is that don't fix what's not broken. It's quite sensible. I get it. He continues, conservatives and communists alike truly believe in their divine doctrines, and it's easier because their life lessons are, for the most part, already laid out for them to absorb and interpret. Yeah, it's much easier to be taken care of by a community and a doctrine. It's like a family that's always there. As long as you abide by the rules, that's the important thing, you're safe. The rules will keep you safe, the community will keep you safe. It's a great warm feeling and it's childlike. And I don't mean to be condescending, not childlike as in like you're a dopey child. It's a secure feeling. I get the primal instinct of that, I admit. The constant thinker has to keep his head on a swivel. Yes. And learn patterns and develop some kind of philosophy right from scratch. They call it a rabbit hole for a reason. Yeah, this is the important thing that stood out for me. This head on a swivel and looking for patterns. The thinker is anxiously interested in life. I noticed this about myself. Like I'm an addict, itching for a philosophical, interesting discussion. And it also suggests us thinkers run the risk of being in a giddy survival mode. That is, there are many neurotic thinkers who think masochistically. Think about that. The great writers and the philosophers of the past went nuts. Think of Nietzsche. What happened to him? No friends. Many of them are loners and burrow down that rabbit hole obsessively, playing a chess game, a complex chess game with only themselves. That can be lobotomizing, so be wary of that, guys. Going nuts and mad trying to work life out, to no avail in the end, since life can only be lived and never perfected as a trophy you hold up, as though you'll reach immortality if you get it right. I think Ernest Becker was right in terms of his fear of death driving everyone to do what they do and act like they act and believe in doctrines that will make everything okay in the end. I think this fear drives many of us without us even knowing it. Finally, he continues, you can get really caught up in your own head to the point that it consumes you. However, on the flip side, you end up very aware of your environment on a fundamental level if you're cautious and remain vigilant. And this is a crucial point, the payoff, I think, in pondering these things, these important philosophical things, and not academically philosophical. I'm not talking about these people that are very hard to be around, that are academic philosophers that talk about, but what is true? And Kant suggested this, and Nietzsche suggested this, and blah, blah, blah. And it's a fun thing to do around other people. It becomes almost this perverse intellectual off session where we're all dancing with words and questioning everything, floating around drunk and seeing who can string the most $100 words together. But I think the crucial thing is when you pare it down to the ethical, pedestrian, real life philosophy that you can talk about and try and work out in relation to making your own life better. That's the payoff. Aware of the life you're making choices through and not sleepwalking through it. That seems disrespectful to me. That's what kind of drives me. It's like I'm throwing my life away by not being conscious and lucid and present. Aware of the quality of your life, the time you give various aspects, people, things in your life, choices, and not down the rabbit hole here. That's the important thing. The rabbit hole up here. I don't think it's a rabbit hole if you can constantly think, test, think, test, think, test, think, test. If you just stay in here, you might as well be in a straitjacket in a white padded room on your own. Don't stay neurotic in your own head thinking about these things, but in the world. Thinking about the pedestrian way we live our lives in an interested level, in a responsible level. That's kind of what interests me. So thank you for that really thoughtful comment, Flaccid Enduro, on my Instagram. And by Classic Enduro, his name, he's obviously interested in enduro bikes, where you really do need to keep your head on a swivel. If you're into sports and a lifestyle that needs to keep you alert, you need to stay alert, you need to be looking left and right. And you go to the extremes of extreme sports, skydiving, base jumping, where you need to be aware and alert of life. You feel exhilarated so much, where I think being responsibly ethical and philosophical and thinking about these kind of things is a lower level of that, but still looking in the same perspective and being cut from the same cloth. So I can understand by his lifestyle. And I've noticed a lot of motorcycle riders are more philosophically minded than your pedestrian cubicle office worker. Anyway, I'd like to know your thoughts, guys. Please extend this conversation in the comments section. I find this fairly interesting about thinking too much, the pros and cons, and how it's benefited you, or you've actually dug yourself out of the rabbit hole and it doesn't actually benefit your life. You'd rather belong to the group, and it's just been a waste of time in your experience, whether it's better to lean more in the direction of the group or more in the direction of the isolated philosopher. I'd say there's somewhere in between, and there's a very particular type of somewhere in between, leaning in one direction or the other, depending on what kind of person and character you are. But let me know your thoughts in the comments section. Please give the video a like. Please subscribe, hit the bell, share the video around if you want to say thank you. There are donation links below. I'll talk to you very soon, guys. Keep the comments coming. Bye.